I'm Wendy Bacon. I work at UTS. My background is both as an academic but also as an investigative journalist. And this year I also went on the board of a community organisation called Newsstand. And that organisation has been set up more of a basic campaigning community organisation to try to work for a more improved, accountable media. Well, look, I think at least it's going to look at how to regulate independent online media, but I really hope that doesn't become the main focus of the inquiry, because there's so much to look at with the mainstream media and so many problems in the mainstream media. Actually, I think there's a crisis there. So I hope that they don't focus on independent online media, which is really a very small sector in Australia. When I talk about online media in relationship to the media inquiry, I'm talking about independent media that is really journalism, news and current affairs. But people who set themselves up as a news and current affairs organisation, I think it is reasonable that some form of accountability is put in place. I actually would prefer the word accountability in some ways rather than regulation, because even though regulation can mean many different things, sometimes it smacks of, for some people, they will use the word and say, well, that equals state control. Actually, it doesn't need to equal that at all. I think we need regulation which takes account of online media. That's the first thing. Now, in terms of the independent media, really we're not talking about too many organisations. We're talking about Crikey, New Matilda. We're probably talking about some sorts of entertainment sites that purport to be news and current affairs. But really the whole thing is not that big. There's some independent people who are, I think, operating as journalists. So, yes, I think that something will come out of it. I think it should not be heavy regulation myself. What I would like to see is, first of all, there be some form. If you want to claim the benefits of being a journalism outlet, a news and current affairs outlet, I think you should, first of all, state to the public what your code of ethics is. Yes, I'm a bit wary of the Australian Press Council kind of expanding themselves. The reason being, at the moment they are funded and essentially, at least very strongly, influenced by the owners. While there are journalism representatives, not even the body of journalists really have any sort of controlling influence. Not that I necessarily think you want a controlling influence. I think really what you need is an independent regulator. So at the moment they don't cover online anyway, so they'd have to be expanded. And secondly, I'm not sure that they're really the organisation to do it. I probably would rather see a new and independent body that is completely independent in its operations of the state, that is funded through a combination of private subscription from the big owners and possibly much smaller ones for independent people, so that people can actually sign up to it. But I would also think that there needs to be some public funding of it so it can operate properly and efficiently. At the moment, we have laws to protect journalists not naming their confidential sources. That's just gone through fairly recently through the federal parliament, and as part of that, bloggers and independent journalists can get the benefit of that. But if you are going to get the benefit of that, you need to be able to prove that you are someone who operates according to a professional code of ethics for journalists. So, if you want the benefit of that law, I think it's reasonable that you should have to show that you operate ethically as a journalist. Now, there could be other ways, but one possible way is to put up on your website your code of ethics, and I think people should do that anyway, and then possibly sign up to something like a totally revamped media council. I am wary, I've got to say I'm wary, because putting this forward, if it ended up that it was one, controlled by the owners, or secondly, controlled by the government, then I would be really worried about what would happen to small independent players, because you've always got the danger that people will try and crush dissidents. I think really I am a little bit concerned that, as you can see from the way I'm talking, that constructive ideas are really good to make everyone more accountable for their journalism. But at the same time, I'm wary that other people could use them to impose and try to crush independent media. Because I think regulation can mean different things, and I guess I would broaden a little bit and say, how can we use public policy to get a more diverse media in Australia? Because we have one of the most concentrated medias in the Western world. And I think that one thing that could be very good is to give tax deductibility to small, to independent journalism, that people could actually fund it directly. I think that would be a really good move, and the possibility of some sort of subsidisation of particularly rural and regional media, because that's where the concentration is most extreme and where the journalism resources are very thinly spread. So I guess that's not quite regulation, but nevertheless the media inquiry is meant to be looking at that, so I think it's good to include that maybe in the submissions. One thing made me a little bit optimistic, and that is when the issues paper came out, which is incredibly slim. The issues paper is very slim, but it did ask a really important question. It did ask, is the notion of the marketplace of ideas as being the main way to secure truth, is that the main and most important conception of freedom of speech? That's not the exact words, but that's the essential idea. Now, I think that there's many conceptions of freedom of communication which go beyond a free trade in ideas and the whole marketplace metaphor. I think that things like access for all voices, all sections of community. I think also looking at private power and how that is exercised as well as state power. I think they're really important ideas, and there's plenty of academic literature out there and other commentary that we can present to the inquiry to try to urge them to take a broader look. And then I think if they do take a broader look, they will begin to see why, even to answer the questions they've got, they need to look at the operation of media power and the concentration of power, which, coming back to your original question about independent media, means that independent media, yes, I think it is time for them to be brought within some sort of framework of democratic media and accountability, but it's not the big question. Really, what's needed there is to facilitate it and grow it, and actually look at some of the abuses of power that are currently being wrought by the mainstream media.